Raising women's voices.
One story at a time.
Welcome to the She Said Project podcast. On a cold winter's day, there's nowhere I'd rather be than right here in the WCIA podcast studio with our friends who are fans and family and friends of the She Said Project. Welcome to another episode of the She Said Project podcast. I am your host, Jeanette Jerzyk. How are you? How is everybody today?
Hi, Jeanette Jerzyk. I'm Carrie Rosso, your sidekick, co-founder.
Which sounds odd because you really were the lead in all of this. You created That's What She Said 12 some years ago. And I know I gave myself the very fancy title of national director, but I don't think of you as a sidekick at all. You are a mentor. You are a leader. You are my inspiration, and I'm about to break out into song.
You're going to sing?
I just might. And everyone will be the worse for it.
Well, sidekick is just a lot more fun. You know, you have to do all the heavy lifting. You know, you gave yourself a fancy title, but you do all the fancy work. So I get to just be on like the sidekick making fun of everything.
Well, I told you once upon a time, Carrie, here's the deal. The things that it takes to produce a That's What She Said show are the things that bring me joy. My background is in theater. I've studied it. I've produced theater in multiple cities. And then I said, well, stay involved and enjoy the parts that bring you joy. And I think we found a beautiful arrangement. It works. I think it works well.
It really is. It's like a nice marriage. Everybody knows their strong points. You know I'm going to make fun of you. This is basically, you know how I am as a wife now too.
Oh my God, I know what your husband feels like.
I'm his sidekick. He does all the heavy lifting. This is all coming to me right now. And then I just stand around and make inappropriate jokes, and he shakes his head. Yeah.
That is a great way to describe it. But you know what? Sometimes you have to know your skills. You have to know your talents, and that's where you stay. Stay in your lane.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, I love the lane that I'm in because I get this incredible opportunity to work with women as they're discovering their story that they're going to share on the That's What She Said stage. And, you know, it's all because once upon a time, every good story starts with once upon a time, Carrie Rosso invited me to help out on a production of That's What She Said. And I got to direct the cast in 2015. And I don't know if you've ever heard me say this, but I've never looked back. Like, that experience changed my life. And I've directed probably 30 plus shows since. And I love every minute of it. And yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've ever heard me say this or anyone's heard me say these words, but I'm so sorry for what, if you would compare the nuts and bolts of that first show, you know, we were just like a pile of puppies. You know, we were just so excited to tell stories, so excited somebody gave us a stage. And you really came in, and if you compare, you know, all of that to the well-oiled machine that you have today, you should be very proud.
Well, you guys put on a good facade. That pile of puppies certainly lured me in, and I'm here for the long haul. It's been such a fun adventure. So I get to direct That's What She Said here in Champaign-Urbana, which is the flagship community. But when we launched in other communities, you may or may not remember, I direct and produce the show in Bloomington Normal. I've directed a handful of shows in Danville, Illinois. I direct the show in Decatur. It's a co-production over there. I help out with a show in Peoria. This past year, I directed the first show in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's a hodgepodge. But
so maybe if you could just step it up a little.
I know. I'm totally slacking.
Slacker.
You know, speaking of underachievers, perfect segue. I'm going to introduce our guest because I did get to direct the show she was in Bloomington Normal a couple years ago. And she is one of those women who does a lot of things and does them all well and is continuing to find ways to help other people do what they do well. So let's bring her out here, Julie Navickas. I knew I was going to screw that up. Julie Navickas is with us here on the podcast. Hi, Julie.
Hi. Hello. Welcome. Thank you so much.
All the way from Bloomington Normal. Are you Bloomington or are you Normal? Which one are you?
I'm in Bloomington.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you were in the Bloomington Normal, That's What She Said show a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, and you
Hmm.
shared a story. And what is your biggest memory of that night?
Oh my gosh. I just remember being so terrified, but feeling so supported at the same time. It was a wonderful experience, and that was definitely well outside of my comfort zone.
I'm surprised to hear that, considering that you are an author and a speaker in your own right. What was so scary about that night?
Oh, I mean, great question, but I don't think I've ever really shared anything that's really personal to me. I mean, much of what I do is about telling somebody else's story, or I'm making up my own stories for my own novels that I write. But this was an opportunity where I really had to show other people what my history looked like. And it was a very uncomfortable experience because that's not my default.
Wow. How did you get connected with She Said? And were you a quick yes, or did we have to woo you?
I was definitely a quick yes. I have known Jeanette for a few years from, I guess, just previous partnerships. And so her and I have always kind of crossed paths, but this was an opportunity. I think, Jeanette, gosh, we were sitting down for coffee and I was going through a career transition at the time. And you were the first person I said, "Hey, I just quit my job. I'm going to do something new." And you were like, "Great. Will you also be in the show this fall?"
Well, I
I
mean,
said
this
yes.
is this is a little unknown story. So Julie got involved when we launched the She Said Press, and she actually was part of the team that helped us, that consulted on our first production, our first publication of That's What She Said from the Stage to the Page, Volume One, our collection of stories.
Wow. So
That's
that
right.
coffee, usually I tell people if Jeanette asks you for coffee, like odds are pretty
There's a
high
reason.
that you're about. But were you surprised? Because yours, if that's the case, then you could have been getting together to talk about the book. You could have been getting together to talk about other things. Were you surprised?
I was definitely surprised. It was something that I had thought about because I was so familiar with the She Said program, but I never really thought that I had a story worthy, of sharing. I mean, you listen to so many of these other incredibly powerful women who have such compelling stories to share, and I'm like, I don't know if I can stand on the same, stage as them. And leave it to Jeanette though to like pull out the right story and make you feel included.
Well, not only did we find one, I actually think your story is incredibly relevant today. So, very recently, on a couple of our recent podcasts, we've had some really interesting conversations about parenting. And I've learned some wonderful wisdom from Carrie and some of our guests about, there's different parenting techniques and styles, and what type of parent we want to be to our littles. But there's this generational shift of what our parents were like. And you've had you are a mom, you have three littles, and
Do.
you shared some vulnerable experiences with your own parental relationships. And for those who are on social media, I think that is a very popular conversation these days. Am I wrong? Does that sound right?
Oh,
I've seen a lot of it.
very accurate. Very accurate. Yes.
Because I think adult children are being more vocal about their struggles, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very fair statement. I think the millennial generation has been very outspoken. And now that we have platforms that enable us to share those voices, it's become um, a growing statement, a growing sentiment. And all of a sudden, everyone's going, "Hey, that happened to me too. And I'm going to share my story as well."
And there's power in the sharing of your story, right? You feel a sense of connection, you feel a sense of relief. Um, I hope that's what you took from the experience.
Oh, certainly. It was definitely a difficult story to share, but you feel so empowered by so many people that I didn't know anyone in that audience that night. I had very few friends, no family outside of my husband who was willing to come and listen, and so you do connect with others, and that does strengthen the feeling that you're doing the right thing and you're sharing the right message for everyone else.
Well, sometimes the people that you are meant to connect with are from the community, and
Yes.
you're very involved in the Bloomington Normal community. everywhere. I mean, Julie is a professional communications person. That's your profession. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. And president of the Central Illinois Communications Association.
You are correct in that too. Yes.
See, I'm just surrounded by
I
slackers.
memorized her resume for today, apparently.
You did.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a listen to Julie's story, and then we'll talk some more about how much how much you love Shih Tzus. We'll be right back.
Watch your mouth.
I'm so excited to share today's guest and her story. Julie Navickas is going to tell her story, No More Shih Tzus, from That's What She Said Bloomington Normal 2024. Enjoy.
I hate Shih Tzus. That's right, you heard me. Those impossibly cute, little smushy-faced dogs. They usually come back from the groomer with a little bow in their hair or a bandana around their neck. Yeah, those. I cannot stand them. By nature, I am a dog lover. But because of my dad's pink sweater-wearing Shih Tzu, Princess Sophia, I have forever been turned off by the breed with dainty paws and fluffed hair. And I'm here to tell you why. One of my earliest memories from childhood was of my dad putting his fist through a wall. I was maybe 3 years old when it happened, which meant my brother was just about 1. I can remember my dad scooping him up with bleeding hands in a drunken stupor and absolutely refusing to let him go. My mom stood by in tears, just pleading with him to safely set my brother down. But it didn't matter what words she spoke or how many tears she shed. My dad could never be reasoned with in his worst moments. Many years later, I realized that my mom hid that hole in a wall with my grandmother's jewelry box. It was a Band-Aid to a much larger problem. I just didn't know it at the time. His fits of rage were not an everyday occurrence. I still enjoyed a very ordinary, middle-class suburban childhood. We went to Disney World for my 9th birthday, and growing up, we camped together as a family almost every weekend. My brother and I played baseball and softball every summer, and despite my dad's struggles, we lived a very relatively normal life. But it was the unexpected, unanticipated days that still sink my stomach looking back. I remember having a softball game in Richmond, Illinois, the summer I turned 13. My dad was responsible for driving me to the game, and my mom was going to meet us there after work. But as I climbed into the van that day, the beer cans colliding with my toes should have been a red flag. I was just too young, and I didn't recognize it for what it was. My dad was absolutely hammered and was ready to take the wheel with both of our lives in hand. I don't know what demons he fought that day, but I do know what angels watched over me. It's been 25 years, but I can still feel that terror streaking up my spine. I can still feel the goosebumps on my skin. And I can still, if I close my eyes, feel that van swerving into the opposite lane. I don't know what higher power allowed us to arrive unscathed that night, but I do know what arms I ran to the second we arrived. I clung to my mom and I just cried. The game had already started, but I never got to play. I didn't want to anymore. I just begged her to take me home and to never let him drive me anywhere ever again. The next day after school, I found a pink Post-it note on my pillow. It was paper-clipped to a $5 bill. All it said was sorry. I kept that $5 bill. I still have it, tucked away in an envelope. Because of my dad's dependence on alcohol, He wrecked more than just cars. He wrecked lives in inexplicable ways. For all his faults and the emotional scars that he left in his wake, he did teach me something along the way. He instilled in me the need to always do the right thing. Now, in hindsight, his words are outrageously ironic. It's been 5 years since I ended my relationship with my father, for good. This was not a decision I made lightly. My dad has suffered from alcoholism my entire life. And if I'll be so bold, I will also diagnose him with narcissism, aggression, depression, and whatever the medical term is for being a pathological liar. It's been 5 years since we last spoke. $1 for every year of silence. It's the best investment I have ever made. For myself, for my husband, and for our children. To quote the New York Times bestselling author, Glennon Doyle, a woman becomes a responsible parent when she stops being an obedient daughter. Right? More than 1/4 of young adults are estranged from one or both of their parents, suggesting a complete societal shift away from the traditional American family. The hashtag toxic family has 1.9 billion views on TikTok for a reason. I'm a part of this statistic. On Easter Day 2019, I upheld his words and I made the decision to do the right thing for my own inner peace, but also for the future of my children. It was the day I decided I was done. I was 4 days postpartum with my youngest. I remember holding my infant in my hands, watching my son and my daughter open their Easter baskets. One of the little things I had tucked inside was a bag of vanilla-flavored goldfish cookies. The kids didn't care. They preferred their bubbles and their peeps and their chocolate bunnies. But I remember vividly watching my dad pick up that bag. And without asking, he ripped it open and he sprinkled a couple cookies on my couch. For Princess Sophia, my favorite pink sweater wearing Shih Tzu. I can still hear her stupid snaggle teeth crunching and munching on my children's Easter treats. I can still see it caught in her fluffy hair. And I swear, she looked me straight in the eye and she chewed every bite with zeal. Now, I recognize that this small act in itself, it was not heinous. But keep in mind, I had just given birth 4 days before. I had barely slept. I definitely hadn't showered. And in addition to my infant son, I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old to care for. Not smart. The fact that anyone had an Easter basket that year was a flippin' miracle. I asked him to stop, and I explained that the cookies were not for the dog. They were for my kids, for his grandkids. He waved me off, and he fed her more. I asked him to stop again, but my request carried no weight. The same way my mom's pleas fell on deaf ears so many years before, my feelings didn't matter today, like hers didn't matter yesterday. It was the same cycle, the same record playing on repeat. My husband intervened, repeated my words, and so did my mom. But no matter what was said, he defiantly fed that dog until the entire bag was gone. Now, like I said, I get that this act wasn't anything major, but it was a defining moment for me because I knew I didn't have to continue this relationship. He hurt me that day more than any day prior because he demonstrated to me just how little he cared. The love and affection he showed that dog far surpassed the love he held for his daughter. She mattered more than me. Boomers accuse millennials and Gen Zers to be too quick to cut contact. And I'm here tonight to push back on that. We do not have to tolerate unacceptable behavior because someone is related to us by blood. We're not obligated to love each other unconditionally. I place a higher premium on my own peace, even if it comes at the expense of something as steadfast as the family unit. How a family comes together and comes apart isn't rational or easily explained. It's impossibly tangled. When one thread is pulled, the entire thing comes unraveled. By the threads of Princess Sophia's pink sweater, I unraveled the relationship I shared with my father. And not a day goes by that I regret that decision. Wherever he is, I wish him well. But I wish more for me.
Okay, now I'm feeling really guilty that I happen to be wearing a pink sweater today in the studio. Oops. Julie, I'm truly sorry for my wardrobe choice.
It's actually so perfect.
Seriously did not make that connection, but
Neither did I.
no, yeah, the details of the story they're all coming back to me now. My goodness. I mean, the dog was obviously just a symbol of what went down between you and your dad. And how are you today? How many years has it been now?
So that was September of 2024. So I guess we're looking at a little over 6 years now. Math isn't my strength.
It's easy math.
Yeah, and no regrets, still no contact.
No, certainly not. Anyone who's gone through something similar, I think we all have days where we think about it. You might reconsider. And then the stronger part of me says, no, that was a decision you made for the betterment of yourself and everyone around you. And there's no sense in opening that part of your life again. So no regrets. That was the good decision on my end.
Not only was it a huge, significant decision, but then, 5 years in, sharing that part of your story with the world. And you and I talked a lot about how delicate it was. That's what she said. We have a rule. We're not here to throw anyone under the bus. We try very hard not to tell other people's stories, but obviously that one was very significant, as it was affected by, it was a relationship that you were talking about. And so I thought you did it well, and we talked about what the consequences could be depending on, who heard the story, but you felt very strongly that this was something you needed to say.
Yeah, certainly. I still feel that way. I don't regret sharing that story. There's no value in keeping it wrapped up and hidden if somebody else can hear it and relate to it and perhaps do something similar. So even though I personally did not get a lot of positive support and feedback from those in my family who would rather have kept it quiet and hidden, I hope that others who have listened to it, heard it in whatever form, they might feel empowered to look at their own lives and make a decision if it warrants it.
Did you get feedback along those lines from folks that were either in the audience or who have seen the video? What kind of feedback did you get?
Oh, just a tremendous outpouring of support. Lots of other individuals in my life who had no idea. It's not a topic that you just walk around and just, shout and talk about and share unless you feel really close and connected with somebody. And so many people who I worked with for years, who I was friends with for, nobody knew, right? Because that's not a common topic. But the outpouring of support and the individuals who are saying, gosh, Me too, right? I have a lot of similar experiences, and you've made me feel better about them, more empowered to speak about them because it is a really sensitive, taboo topic.
Agreed. I have to give you props because being the brave one who talked about it, I have no doubt that you gave others permission or gave them permission to forgive themselves for whatever decisions they felt they had to make. You were crystal
Yeah.
clear. This was for your own sanity. This was for the, best interest of you and your husband and your children, and you did what you had to do.
Yeah.
And I loved like just the details surrounding the Easter morning story. And, you had a baby 4 days old and a 1-year-old and a 2-year. I can only imagine like what that morning felt like.
Well, I mean, I just applaud you that you had the strength of character to make that decision in that moment, because boy, those first 4 days, 4 weeks postpartum, I pity the fool who would cross a woman in that state.
I feel like it was your mama
it's
bear
true.
coming out. Like you had no more, F's to give, and you were not going to tolerate one more thing. Like you were in full mom mode. And I know hormones are a powerful thing.
Well, and I do think that once we become mothers, everything really shifts. All your decisions that you're making aren't just about you anymore. It's about the kind of parent you want to be and partner you want to be, and you're thinking about everything as it impacts the world of your family, and it does shift everything.
Yeah, that's incredibly true. Very, very accurate. Because once you have those little people who depend on you for everything, and in that moment when I made that decision, I mean, they were 1 and 2 and 4 days old. I mean, it was definitely a trying time. It was incredibly challenging for a multitude of reasons, but you would think that as, somebody who is supposed to love you and support you and care for you, you wouldn't make moments that are so difficult 1,000 times worse. But he did. And I think that was just the moment where I was like, you know what? We are so done with this. I got so many other problems in my life that I got to work through. This one needs to go.
And
And he did.
I love the old saying of the children are watching, and I think that I know personally, there have been lots of times when making the right choice is not the choice I wanted to make. I wanted to make the different choice, and knowing that my children are watching and I have to, sometimes it's a fail, but for the most part, you think, okay, they're watching. I need to make the right call here.
Yeah, certainly. There's been many conversations where, especially my daughter, who's 9, and she's very self-aware and can understand concepts that I would prefer she didn't understand yet. But she'll ask, she'll see photos and be like, "Who's this guy?" And I'm like, "Oof, this is a tough conversation to have. That I wasn't thinking about this moment in 2019, but it's important that she understands why I did what I did, and it was for her best interests as well as mine and her brother's." It's a decision that stays with you, and it'll continue to be a conversation I have.
So are you no contact just with your dad, or are you no contact with your mom or your sibling?
I'm very close with my mom. When my parents did eventually split, I got her, and my brother kind of took over for my dad. And it has definitely changed my relationship with him. We still talk. We're still good, but it's definitely not the same because we just didn't see eye to eye on that situation.
But what you did is you set boundaries. And
We did.
like you said, when children are watching, you're teaching them what healthy boundaries look like and who you're letting into your life. And for this moment, it's your father. But, if your young children grow, you want them to understand how to do that, whether it's a romantic relationship, a toxic work relationship. You are setting them up now to understand how those uncomfortable conversations go down, and that you don't have to take whatever is handed to you in this life. You get to choose. I was so proud of you for using the Glennon Doyle quote. Hearing that again, brought me some chills. That was, so when Julia told me this whole story, I was immediately like, do you know Glennon Doyle? Have you heard this quote? And it just rings so true and appropriate. And so thank you for sharing that, because I hope, Glennon, if you're listening, well done, well said. But now it's officially a Julie Navickas quote. So there you go.
Equally as influential.
Absolutely. I mean, you are a writer, my darling. So let's talk for a second about the writing that you do when you're not on the She Said stage.
Sure, certainly. One of my favorite things in this life to do is to tell stories. And so when I'm not doing it from a corporate standpoint in my full-time job, I love to do it from a love story perspective. And so ever since 2020, I've had this wonderful side hustle, I'll call it, of writing romance novels. And it has just spiraled and grown bigger and better than anything I ever could have imagined. And I cannot wait to see what this year brings, because I have a feeling it's going to be some good stuff.
This is exciting. Okay, so when you say love story, and this is because I'm hopeful, is that code for smut?
I always tell individuals, I'm like, all right, let's put this on a scale, right, of chili peppers.
Okay.
So if it is 1 chili pepper, meaning kind of more of like a closed door romance, fade to black, and 5 being like as descriptive.
Like
Okay.
50
As
Shades
you
of
can
Grey.
see.
Okay. Ooh.
Yes, in that space.
5 chili peppers.
I would say I'm a 2, maybe a 3 in some scenes in some books, but that's a rare thing. So somewhere I think in that happy medium.
How did someone get into writing romance novels? What was your inspiration?
Oh, this is so silly. In grad school, a long time ago, I had taken a advanced writing for mass media course. And one of the larger assignments for that class was to develop a feature film length screenplay. And so the story that inspired my first romance novel was actually a script that I had written years before for a course in grad school.
Wow.
That's a pretty cool story. Does
So-
your professor
it's
know
kind of fun.
what happened that you published?
He does. Yep. He knows exactly where that script eventually led me. And yeah, we've had many conversations. He was on my thesis committee, before I graduated, and became a colleague of mine in the School of Communication at Illinois State University. So we've stayed close over the years, and it's been very fun. It's all because of him.
I love that.
I know. Well, in this, I'm hesitating to ask, but I have to. So do you draw from your personal life? You know what I'm saying?
Leave it
My
to Gary.
husband's going to watch this and he's going to be like, what are you talking
So you
about?
can just blink twice.
I would say some of the more healthy relationship, side of things, the,
So the good
understanding of
stuff,
one another,
yes.
communication, all the good things, right? But I may have had to reach a little for the other components.
Well, tell us about how many books you have published, and give us like a brief synopsis of the series.
Sure. So I do have 6 books that are published. The first 3 are called the Trading Heartbeats trilogy. The next 3, it's a spin-off series called the Clumsy Little Hearts trilogy. All 6 of them are published with a small press publisher called Inkspell Publishing. They released between 2022 and 2024. And now in 2026, I have done something a little crazy, and I am rewriting all of them from a first-person perspective instead of a third-person perspective. I've just learned so much over the last few years and know that I can really enhance and fine-tune these stories to be more enjoyable for readers. So that's my 2026 project. I am re-releasing all of my published titles.
I am so intrigued and excited to learn about this new project. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more about Julie and her upcoming project and rewriting your novels. I want to know more. We'll be right back. All right, Julie, you just shared, and I'm fascinated, that you have 6 published romance novels, and your project for this upcoming year is to rewrite them in the first person perspective. Now, before I ask you to divulge, this is so interesting to me, because if that's what she said, our number one assignment, our number one goal for our speakers is to tell your story in the first person. And we see over and over again for real women, now you're in, fiction, but how hard it is for women to, to share their story. And I'm curious, because you had to go through that process, I'm going to just sit here and assume the answer is yes. Did we inspire you? Lie to me. It's okay.
Absolutely. Yes, wholeheartedly, Jeanette. This is what led me down this path.
No, I am actually curious where this idea came from and how the experience has been.
Yeah. So after I released those 6 books, I had written them all in third person. They were learning novels for me, right? I mean, I've always been in the writing space, but I was still new to creative writing and storytelling. And so I did the best that I could while I was learning to do it. And they published, and that was great. And then I tried my hand at doing some more romantic suspense stories that just lent themselves better to a more first person perspective. And I really just fell in love with that style of writing. You can just deepen the character emotions and feelings and really dig into their character arc and their goals and what they want to do. And I don't think I'll ever go back to third person storytelling. And so this past year, after signing with a literary agent, I put out a rom-com on submission. And I've discovered that it is just an incredibly painfully slow process in the traditional publishing world that I didn't have a lot else to focus on. And so I thought, well, gosh, what can I do this year that would help build my author brand, strengthen my storytelling skills? And one of the top things that came to mind was to revisit the stories that I started this whole journey with. And I'm going through them one by one, and I have a whole plan of how to release them this year, slowly working through it, but it's been a really great challenge, a great exercise, and I know that the final product is just going to be so much better than my first efforts.
Carrie, you're a writer. Did you ever dabble in fiction or romance?
No, she has a skill set far beyond. I mean, mine is just like something funny happens and I'm all, this is going to make people laugh. I don't give it much more thought than that. But so I'm so impressed when people have this skill set that you do and that you're able to pull that off. And
you believe these you're going to republish? Or I guess, are they going to be called the same or?
They will all stay the same,
okay.
Same book covers. They'll still go through the same publisher that I partnered with for the first time. The wonderful, her name is Melissa. She works at Inkspell Publishing. And after speaking with her, she agreed that, hey, this could be a good time. We can refresh, your stories. And I'm happy and humbled to say that they were very successful the first time when they were released. But I think that this will just draw more of a different type of reader who might prefer that first person perspective. And it'll just be stronger writing and just stronger storytelling. So she was supportive of it, and I'm excited.
So take us back to, were you always that sort of kid writing in a journal or doing creative essays? How did all of this start?
Yeah. 4th grade, I participated in a young authors classroom, competition. And I wrote this really sweet, silly story about vegetables and how they needed to escape from the refrigerator before they got eaten. And, it was just silly. It was 4th grade, right? I was like, writing in cursive and stuff on a notebook paper. And ever since that moment, when somebody handed me a little blue ribbon and said, hey, you're pretty good at this storytelling stuff, you should keep going. And I didn't for the longest time. I found myself in more of the strategic writing, the corporate storytelling space, writing for an audience, yes, but with a strategic purpose. And that's its own skill set. And so it took me a really long time, and it took me to the pandemic to get back into that creative mindset. And now that I kind of jumped into it during that time frame, I cannot stop myself. This is something I'll do forever.
Wow.
I love this for you. First of all, you're living in your purpose, you're living in your passion, which I applaud women who create that in their lives. You're living your life by design. And there's so many women I get to work with who have these fantasies and dreams and, these artistic wishes that they push off, or, life gets in the way or they're too busy. And so you've actually built your life around fulfilling this fantasy, which is great. I know every time I say fantasy, Carrie gives me a look. But So these vegetables in the refrigerator, tell me more. I'm so
I don't know that there's more to tell, Jeanette.
Well, I think that there's a story in everything. Like I
Yeah.
was laughing, thinking, sometimes people are searching for like this big, heavy topic, and you literally, right out of the gates, made stories out of what's in the fridge. I love that.
Yeah. So it's where it all started. And it's funny, I still have a copy of it. It's one of those things where I'll pull out and, you think about, how old are you in fourth grade? I don't know, 10 or something like that. And I always see a quote of, if you're living day to day, you have to think through what would the 10-year-old version of you think of the woman that you are today? And what does the 80-year-old version think of you as you're living in the moment today? And if you can make both of those people happy, you're doing something right.
Okay, start stitching that into a pillow right now. That is
Right.
good.
I'm stealing it from somebody else. I saw it somewhere else, but the sentiment is accurate.
Well, I'm sure you're making both Julies very, very proud by pursuing your dream. That's awesome. And now you also are that writer who you don't keep it to yourself. You give back, and you've chosen to inspire other up and coming writers by I think you've taught classes, you go and speak at events, and now you are launching a podcast.
Yeah. So I mentioned I needed a way to fill my 2026 while I was very patiently waiting for a publishing company to want to partner with me. But I can't speed that process up, but I can keep myself busy in the middle. And so you are correct. I have decided that I wanted to launch the Just Right Julie podcast this year. It is a podcast for the writing community, and it has 3 prongs. First one is craft. So anyone who wants to better their writing, we'll talk about how to do that appropriately, how to do it effectively. The second prong is career. So how to take what you want to do and make it a larger part of your day. So instead of just being a side hustle, right, or something that you do for enjoyment in the evening, how do you build it with intention throughout your day? So that career aspect of it. And then the third prong is communication, because that's kind of been my wheelhouse for my professional career. And it's how to speak about it, right? Instead of just keeping it to yourself in a journal, how do you tell others about it with confidence? I mean, that was the only way that I was ever able to find a literary agent who was comfortable representing my career, is to be able to know how to speak about your stories with confidence.
Wow, craft, career, and confidence. We're going to take a quick
Communication.
break. Oh, communication. Craft, career, communication leads to confidence. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll dig a little deeper. Be right back. So, Julie, you are taking all of your experience and knowledge and bringing it to a podcast so that you can empower others to follow their dreams in writing. And you have it broken down into a formula. So are you hosting? Are you bringing in guests? What's your format?
Yeah, so my plan is to do at least 2 episodes a month. One will be a conversation with a guest that I bring on the show, and that guest could be an editor, a marketer, fellow storyteller, whatever it is that their profession and expertise is in. We'll share a conversation. And then I will also do a solo podcast a month that will be more of that craft component that just shares some insider tips and tricks and things that have worked well for me. So a little bit of both.
And what is it called again?
Just Right, Julie.
And so when do you think listeners can find your podcast? When are you planning to release, go live?
Yeah, I'm today, which sounds silly, but right before I hopped on the call with you lovely ladies, I just recorded my first episode with my first guest. She is wonderful, and she is a very cool TV and film casting associate and had some unique things to say about storytelling. So I'm working on that, and my hope is that that will be something I can share with everyone tomorrow.
Well, for those listening to the She Said Project podcast, we release our episodes a few weeks after we record them. And so you can probably go find Just Right, Julie, on your favorite podcast platform right now. So, Julie, how do people find you and your books and information? Do you have a website? ...
I do. Fill in the blank. Yes. Yes, you can find me at authorjulienavickas.com. You can find my books there. You can find my blog that I've kept for about 5 years at this point, full of all kinds of craft tips and my, take on the industry and publishing facts and all kinds of good stuff. You'll also find my podcast hosted there, and a couple of other odds and end things that just have something to do with my books and my author brand.
No, she is fancy pantsy.
I know. And she's doing it all. And she sleeps at night. Like
Right.
all these women who do all the things, I'm like, something has to give. Whether it's sleep or, you work a full-time job, you raise 3 kids, and you sleep at night. How do you do it, Julie? Tell us.
Well, I feel like, Jeanette, I need to ask you that question. You are everywhere
And
doing
I'm failing.
everything.
I don't sleep. I don't eat well. There's definitely corners being cut. I'm late all the time, and I always have to pee. Like, if I write my memoir, and I'm almost scared to say this on the podcast because I don't want anyone to steal it. So I'm going to go trademark it right now. So if you're listening, but when I write my memoir, the title shall be, "I'm late and I have to pee." There it is.
But it's perfect.
I've
fitting.
given it's out of the box.
Immediately draws you in with that title.
That is how I would summarize my life a lot. But I struggle with the balance of doing all the things because, there's so much I want to accomplish and there are only so many hours in the day. And as I get older, there's only so many things my body will let me do and my brain will let me do. I used to be that person who could tuck my kids into bed and stay up till 2 a.m. writing emails, getting stuff done. I can't do that anymore. Like I'm feeling my limitations. I, will sit down on my computer at 10:30 and I can't start something new at that hour. I'm done.
What time of day are you a morning writer, night writer? Where
I
do
am
you
an
fall?
all time of day writer, if that makes sense.
Whenever you have an
because
opening.
because I don't have the luxury of just having, 2 or 3 hours on either end of things. I have just kind of, I guess, trained my brain to write in the small pockets of time that I do have. So it could be, during my lunch hour. It could be a couple of hours after my kids are in bed. I'm not so much of a morning person to get up early and do it, but I have been known to do it in the past. So it just when the moment strikes me.
And earlier I was asking your advice on, how your process is when you think of an idea, like how you find time, but you were saying that you think through your ideas so that by the time you sit down, you're now writing the things that you had already kind of created in your brain. And then what tools do you use? I was asking you, I think we were on the break, like, do you record them on your phone? Do you have notebooks next to your bed? Like, what is your process?
Yeah, I use Google Docs for everything, and it's accessible on my phone, and I always have a laptop next to me. So if I have an idea or I need to take notes, that's typically where I'll drop it, is straight into the document that I'm working on.
So are your friends or people that you're going to have on the podcast, should they be warned? Like, are you a hijacker from real life stories, or should they, filter what they're saying?
That's such a funny question. I do take from inspiration from my life. And so I have definitely, I'll admit, written characters that were fully inspired by somebody that I, have met, been a friend with, acquaintance to. I think that's just the nature of a writer, is to just observe. And if something strikes you that's maybe funny or unique, you kind of just pocket that detail and it'll absolutely come out in a character in print form.
I think most writers, get influenced by real life, but do any of your friends and family try to find themselves in your writing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's for real.
Yeah, for real. There was a character I wrote in my second novel, and it was a woman who, it was just painfully obvious who I was using as, inspiration for this. And so as soon as it came out and everyone read it, they're like, hey, we know her. We know exactly who that character is. I'm like, yep, totally her.
Do any of your characters have pet Shih Tzus?
No.
No.
Firm
Weird.
no.
Firm no.
Firm
I'm just
no.
curious.
No.
And-
I'll never look at a Shih Tzu the same.
No, I don't either. Our neighbors have them, and I just kind of roll my eyes when I see them. I'm like, that's just not for me.
Yeah. Well, I do think the kind of dog you have says a lot about you. I do. Are you a big
Agreed.
dog person? Are you a little dog person? Are you a purse dog person? Are you a mean dog person? Like, I think that all of that says a lot about a person.
I
It's
think
true.
that's very true. It's very true. Yeah, certainly. We have Luna. She is our blue heeler border collie mix, and she was just, a sweet rescue from the Humane Society. We didn't go there looking for her, but she was the one that came to us. So it's just it says a lot about you, which dogs you choose to bring into your life.
Now that I'm thinking about that, I'm going through all my friends who have dogs and like, yep.
You can't unsee it.
Yep.
It tracks. Mm-hmm.
It totally tracks. I have no dog. I'm a cat person, so always have been.
That's okay.
Cats are good too.
Well, we are almost out of time. Julie, any final reflections, words of advice, anything our audience should know about your books? Your
I think my
stories?
final reflection, I would say I'm incredibly grateful to the She Said Project. I never would have had an opportunity that I can think of to share a story so vulnerable and so true that hopefully has made an impact on others who are in similar situations. And while it was incredibly uncomfortable and very difficult, I met so many incredible women who were on the stage with me that evening, and even more after the show, who just came up to me and gave me a hug. And I had no idea who they were, but they found something in my words. And it's such a powerful platform, and I'm so appreciative to be a part of it.
Gosh.
So thank you both.
Thank you so much, Julie. And the Bloomington Normal community is so lucky to have you. You are such a gem. And this up and coming amazing writer we're going to be watching. So
No, I can't wait.
yeah, we're going to go.
Me too.
We're going to read some
Chili Peppers.
Two chili pepper romance. All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today on the She Said Project podcast. Thank you for listening to the She Said Project podcast. All materials contained in the podcast are the exclusive property of the She Said Project, and That's What She Said, LLC. For more information on our live shows, go to shesaidproject.com.